There's diseases in Couch and Walker, I think. It's pretty bad.
I mean, at least it's not the buildings that used to be. I mean, a lot of those towers,
Yeah,
they're even
that's
older.
what I heard.
They're pretty rancid. Hey, y'all, thanks for joining us. We're going to let people come in a little bit more. We've got some people that are showing up in person here, but we also have some people that'll be showing up online. I am going to be recording this so that you all have access to it, and I'll post it. I don't know, through YouTube or something, and make it a private link, so you can access it, but also to send out to people that aren't able to be here today. Um, if you know of anybody that was also needing to get on that's unable to, and for some reason what we talked about today doesn't really cover what they were intending on covering, then I'm going to make probably a makeup opportunity for this next week. But yeah, so just as I guess a heads up for that. But we'll get started here in just a few more minutes. We'll let people catch up with their schedules and get on with us probably about the next minute or two, and we'll get started right around, I'm guessing, 4:03 or so. Any questions from that? Are you guys able to hear me, by the way?
Yeah, we can I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you.
I can hear you just fine as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, same.
I'm going to test something real quick. I'm going to share my screen for the presentation that I have for you. Will you all let me know if you're still able to hear me while that's presenting? So let me share that real quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Just so we can test
no
it.
problem.
Okay, firstly, are you able to see where it says our history?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
And you can still hear me. Great.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. So what we'll probably do, and I mean, I might preserve this until everybody gets on, but I'll give you guys some history and some background of our organization, what it is we do, and then I'll field any questions. We'll have a little Q&A session, and I'm happy to discuss, answer anything and everything that you all have that will be helpful for you to know moving on your project forward, okay?
Okay.
We good with that?
I was
All right.
wondering if this was being recorded and if you could like email me the recording of this, and if not, that's okay. But
Yeah, I'll be recording it, and it's currently being recorded. So just know that anything you say can and will be recorded and passed along to everybody else. But you're like Miranda rights to recording there. But yeah, I'll post it. I will probably have to download it to maybe YouTube or something like that, and just send you all a private link so you're able to see it that way.
sweet, that'll work. Thank you.
Good. All right. You guys couldn't hear me that whole time. I'm just sitting here talking. Let me start over there. So I'm Michael Stuemky. I'm the area director of Big Brothers Big Sisters here in Norman. The way that I kind of want today to go is I'm going to give you guys some background in this presentation, a little bit about our history of our organization, a little bit about how our organization functions, what our mission does, and then also a little bit of an understanding as to why, what it is that are some of the problems we're dealing with that we hope to help resolve with a lot of our youth and the state of Oklahoma, particularly for us and our agency here in Norman and all the smaller towns that surround us. So, but my hopes are that this is a conversation, less of a dictation. So if you have any questions at any point in time, please do not hesitate to to unmute and ask that question. We also have some people here in the physical that are at the table with us, and if they have any questions as well, I will probably repeat them in the event that you're unable to hear them, and kind of give you some feedback on that. Sound good?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. At the end, also, if there are any questions you're holding on to, don't hesitate, ask them, and we'll have a little Q&A session at the end. And hopefully, by the time we're done here, everybody will have both a strong understanding of what it is we do as an organization, but also you'll have kind of all the questions that you're hoping to ask answered so that you're best served for your projects. Good?
Yeah.
All right,
good.
let's roll.
Good.
So let me tell you a little bit about our background and kind of what our history is. So we were founded in 1904. A man named Ernest Coulter was a lawyer, actually a new lawyer. He was working, however, in New York City, and he was working in as a juvenile court clerk. One of the things he realized is, sorry, guys, I'm a historian, by the way. Little background, I was a history teacher for a long time. My first degree is in history, my second is in education. But if you get to 1904, for any of my history peoples, this is the period that we're starting to see people say, hey, we've got some problems with kind of the capitalist movement that we saw happen during second wave industrial revolution. And because of that, we've got a lot of kids that are latchkey kids. Their parents are probably immigrants. They're likely working 14, 16-hour days. And so these kids leave school and they go home and there's nobody there to help them. And so they're being directed by their peers. You can imagine at 12, 13 years old, if you only had your peers to help give you direction, where your life might have gone. So a lot of these kids were ending up in the juvenile justice system. So on this wave of progressivism that we saw happening at the turn of the century, Ernest Coulter was one of these kind of students of this new wave of thinking, how do we as a society help resolve the problems that we see as a society? And so he starts to say, we need to figure out a way that we can support kids that don't have those right support mechanisms at home to make sure we keep them out of the juvenile justice system rather than trying to deal with them once they're here. So because of that, it was really a progressive and a forward way of thinking, preventative in nature rather than responsive. So it was really a pretty brilliant moment. He founded what was Big Brothers of America at that time. At the same time, Ladies of Charity was a Catholic nuns organization that also developed a Big Sisters approach to this at the same time. In 1977, we'll see those join forces and become Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America. So it becomes a collective thing. And that's on the back end of the civil rights movement and recognizing we shouldn't distinguish these things based on gender. However, in Oklahoma, we've been functioning since 1955 in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City was our first agency. Norman here was our second agency, and we were founded in 1969. So in 2019, we actually had our 50th year anniversary here. So we've been functioning in Norman now for 56 years, a really an incredible longevity of our mission. Back in 2006, we merged all of our independent agencies here in Oklahoma to be one organization as Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Oklahoma. And we currently have 5 agencies that are underneath that umbrella here in Oklahoma. And as of 2023, we are in all 50 states. Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America is in all 50 states and in 12 different countries. So we really established what was a bit of a blueprint for a lot of these follow-up organizations to say, you know what, this is a really great way of approaching this, and we think that we'd like to do something similar. So Again, we've got 5 different agencies here in Oklahoma: Norman, Oklahoma City, Stillwater, Tulsa, and Bartlesville. Oklahoma City and Norman are our oldest, followed by Tulsa. Here's our Norman office. If you're ever driving down Main Street and it looks like it's a house that got turned into a church, you're right. It was a house that was converted to a church. This section we're sitting in right now is our playroom. That was added. We've been in this building since 2004, and we are provided this building as a partnership with the Starkey's Foundation. A lot of you all probably hear Starkey's name at University of Oklahoma. There's a cool connection there. So from Starkey's Energy Building and Starkey's, I guess that is, I don't know, that's primarily like energy. I don't know what they do over there, really, to be honest. That wasn't my area that I spent a lot of time in. I think I had a physical science class over there, but I think it's an engineering building primarily. But also Starkey's, I'm used to it, called the Houston Huffman. You guys know it as Starkey's, like the workout facility, Starkey's gym. The Starkey's Foundation is 3 buildings to our east right here, and they pretty much own this entire block. And so what they do is they provide our building at a low, no cost. It's really a low cost, but we get to have this facility at a low cost, which allows us to have a partnership with Starkey's. And so it keeps our costs down, so that really the financial aspect of what we do goes back to mission rather than facility. So that's huge for us. And we really heavily rely on those partnerships to be able to make what we do possible. So we're super grateful for this building. We've been in this building since 2004. My local team here, we've got an incredible team. These are my 3 program specialists. You guys, our program specialists are the heart and soul of what it is we do. When people try to congratulate me on what it is we do, I try to say, you're congratulating the wrong person. The people that really are the heart and soul of what we do are our program specialists. These are the people that are having the everyday conversations with our bigs, our littles. They're making the matches. They're intentional about who they match and why. They're the ones that steward those matches, that make the connections with what helps and assistance those matches need. So when the big doesn't know how to approach something, these are the people that help coach them on about what's the best way to approach their mentorship supports. And so they really are the heart and soul of what it is we do. What and how we serve the littles in Norman and the Norman area wouldn't be possible without them. And I can't say enough about them. I'm their biggest fan. So what is it? What is our mission? How is it that we serve? Well, our mission statements: we create, support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and the promise of youth. Our vision overall is to make sure that every kid is able to achieve their potential. And that potential is going to be different based on every little. But the reality is that we want to make sure that they are served with a connective and a supportive adult, so that they have access to a different way of perceiving life, and they've got somebody that walks through their youth development with them. So what are our services? We take bigs in the community that say, I can be a mentor in some way. You guys, these bigs are ages 18 through literally 99. A lot of people say, well, I have to be a big brother. We're like, really, that name is a little misleading, because the reality is that we have, or a big sister, we have people from the ages of 18 that are recent high school graduates to people that are much more grandparent or great grandparent age that serve these littles. And the common line here is that they come in and say, you know what, I can be somebody that walks along with this little, that meets them where they're at and helps them kind of navigate the journey of their youth and help them make better decisions, help them feel good about themselves, build their self-esteem, and also walk through them with journeys in life that are developmentally things that they might not have a lot of assistance with at home. And so it gives them the opportunity and the expectation of having that person that's really supportive. This is very evidence-based. We do a ton of research, not only into what it is we do, but what are the outcomes of what it is we do. And we keep a lot of data on that, both qualitative and quantitative, so that we can measure and constantly update our approach so that our bigs are most supported the way that they can be, so they can make the match, so we can make sure the matches are best served. How do we do that? We really have 3 programs. We have our school-based program or our site-based program. Site-based is for any one of our bigs that come in that are ages 18 to almost 21. So if you come in and you're a recent high school graduate and you're 18 years old and you want to be a big, great. We're going to go through our site-based program. We have 4 primary focuses with our site-based programs for schools that are here in town. We serve a lot of the schools here, but we really have 4 focus schools, which are robust partnerships. That is Adams Elementary, Jefferson Elementary, Madison Elementary, which if you live south of campus, you're very close to where Madison is. If you know where the intramural fields are, they share basically a playground with Madison. And then we also have Kennedy Elementary. The reason we chose these schools is because they're all pretty close in proximity to OU. So we have a lot of OU students that come be part of that site-based program. But also, those are our 4 highest need elementary schools in Norman. They have the highest rate of incarceration with parents. They have the highest financial need. They have some of the highest needs when it comes to behavioral issues. So we recognize those as being our focus schools. And because of that, we've built these really robust programs with them. We also have our community-based program, which is where bigs and littles go meet in the community. So they're not meeting at the school. Instead, they'll go to events together. They go to baseball games together, softball games, OU football, whatever it might be. And one of our jobs is to help create connections so that those littles and those bigs can go do things that are really fun opportunities for them to experience with one another. But also, they just go hang out at the park, or they go and grab ice cream, or they go grocery shopping. I always tell bigs, actually, the most pivotal things you can do with your littles are going and doing things that are everyday life that aren't big productions, because they get to see you as you, right? They get to have a real relationship with you that's not based on something being a big production. We also have big couple programs where couples will sometimes say, I don't maybe feel comfortable doing this alone, but I feel comfortable with my partner doing this. We're like, great, we can get you matched up with a little as well. But through any one of these programs, we have the ability to go out and recruit people to become bigs. And these are kind of the 3 formats that we do that through. Our number 1 priority is child safety. So we are very intentional with an in-depth enrollment process. When a big signs up to be a big, we come through and we bring them in for an in-person interview. We are going through and doing background research on them, federal, state level background searches. We'll also do OSCN searches, OSCN.net. We also go through any digital online profile they have. So we're going through and looking for any red flags for safety reasons. But also, the more that we know the big, the better we can match them. What we don't want to do is just match for number. We want to match because you're the best fit. So the little has shared life experiences with you, maybe shared cultural backgrounds, or shared hopeful outcomes, or even religious identities, or whatever those things might be. Those become markers that we're trying to be intentional about. This will make a good match for these reasons. So the more we can research the little, the more we can understand them, the more we can research the big, we can ensure that there's going to be safety involved and that there's also going to be the right match, not just a match. So it really helps to develop a partnership and a best approach to making that connection. They go through orientation. All of our bigs go through orientation. They go through training. And that is prior to getting to the point of being matched. Once we are matching them, we bring them in here and we'll either, if it's at site, we'll go to their site and match them there at the school. If it's community-based, they come here. And we introduce them here, and we have activities that help orient them with one another so they get to know each other. They have some icebreaker type stuff. And then we set them up with, what do your first couple outings look like? Let us help you to develop those. And then let's talk to the big about how did that go? What did you talk about? What did you struggle with? The reality is you all might come in as bigs and you say, hey, I'm a pre-engineering major, or I'm an engineering major, and I don't have experience with dealing with a kid that told me about this thing. We're like, those 3 program specialists I was just showing you a minute ago, they do. That's their backgrounds. All the backgrounds are in developmental psychology or early development in some way. So they know where these kids are and they know what stages they're in. Let's coach you to how you can feel comfortable having that next step, that next conversation. So it's a very, very intentional from the match to the continued support. All of it is extremely intentional with why and how. When people are becoming a big, it's pretty comprehensive. They submit an online application, they complete a reference request. We talk to people that you say, hey, this is a good reference for me. They understand me, they know me. We set up an interview with you in person. We do reference follow-ups, in-person interviews, background checks. Then we do an assessment, trying to understand your personality, trying to understand who you are. We go through a volunteer approval program. You do your training, and then we get to match introductions. It's comprehensive. A lot of time and resource goes into just getting to this stage. So What are our challenges? So this is probably where you all, now that you, I guess, let me take a pause there. Are there any questions about kind of how we function on our end prior to getting into why it is we serve kids, how we serve those kids, and what are some of the outcomes of it? Anything here? Nope. Okay. Sorry, I can be wordy, y'all, but hopefully you have a pretty decent understanding of kind of just what some of our background is, our history and such. Okay, let's just talk about ACEs or ACE scores and adverse childhood experiences. This is a very important thing. So you're noticing some things on here that are tough to deal with. Parental divorce, sexual abuse, mental illness in the home. This is usually a parent or a sibling or a guardian that has severe mental illness. Neglect, substance abuse, domestic violence, emotional abuse, family suicide or family deaths for kids, physical abuse, and parental incarceration. Oklahoma has recognized that 2 of these exist in 2 in 7 Oklahoma kids. My matches here in Norman alone average a little over 5 of these experiences. That's on average. So I'm going to ask you, and I definitely want this to be a conversation, not a dictation, but speak up a little bit. Why do you think these are important things to identify rather than like a car wreck or something that might happen that was a one-time thing?
I feel like it could be like kind of traumatic in a way. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, Alex. Yeah, they're going to be traumatic. And the reality is that these don't stop at one date. The reality is that any one of these things, if it's emotional abuse, if it's domestic violence, physical abuse, neglect, this is not a one-off thing. This is something that continues to have an effect on the child. We recognize developmentally that these experiences in kids, and a lot of times will halt development at that space. So when you say, hey, I've got this 7th grade kid and they are just emotionally, they don't know how to deal with the most basic things. They're a lot of times still existing in this trauma and they are in survive mode. They are not in thrive mode. So they perceive any threat around them to be similar to these experiences they've already had. Right. And so they go back to this. The best method out of that is experience with an adult that has maybe either dealt with this or that's not existing in it that can walk with them through it. Right. Counselors help with that, but having a friend that is an adult life experience is a very different thing than having an adult sitting there saying, I need this from you. Instead, this is an adult, this is a friend that's meeting them where they are. So our response to this is saying, how do we affect this? Again, if they're experiencing, the majority of our kids are experiencing over 5 of these adverse childhood experiences, they have a very high ACE score. The reality is that statistically, their outcomes don't tend to be great, which means what happens with their own kids? What happens with the people they affect in their communities? It becomes a repetitive cycle. So a lot of what we're trying to do is break cycles, stop this from continuing to occur, right? And try to diminish the effect that it has on kids. 184,000 kids in Oklahoma live in poverty. We have the 5th highest teen pregnancy rate in the United States. 89,000 kids in Oklahoma are experiencing parental incarceration. That means at some point in their life of development, before the age of 18, they experience one or both parents in incarceration. That's huge. That is huge. That means they're 70% more likely than their peers to get involved in some type of juvenile justice system. That's significant, right? 61% live in single family homes. About 49% of our kiddos and their families receive direct income assistance. About 72% of them received free or reduced lunch at school. So realistically, we're dealing with a lot of kids that have some pretty difficult at-home situations. But this isn't just for the poor kids, right? We've got littles that live, if you're not from Norman, this might not mean much to you, but I have littles that live on, $1 million homes and behind gated communities. The reality is that somebody in their life has said they can use this for some reason. And the common thread here is that we're here to serve them all, right? But a lot of our littles do come from pretty tough situations. Oklahoma incarceration rates are significant. If you were to make every state in the union an independent nation, we would be 5th in the world for incarceration rates. That's significant. Oklahoma is significantly higher than the national average of number of incarcerated parents. So because of that, a lot of our littles are dealing with really significant issues. Here in Norman alone, about 27% of my littles have an incarcerated parent. So about 1 in 4. An outcome that we're really proud of is that in the last 8 years we've been tracking this data, we've not had a single little, not one, that's been involved in juvenile justice. That's a statistic anomaly, right? That does not happen. So we're very, very proud of the way that having a big influences and affects our little's outcomes. So what is our solution to the problems? We can sit there and grind on problems all day long, but the reality is just identifying the problem is the first step. What we do is we provide an adult that goes and meets the little where they are. That doesn't say, like a teacher, you have to come to me, you have to get the grade. And mind you, as a teacher, and I've got a heart for kids, and I always said, hey, I'm teaching hard classes, I'm teaching all AP histories and things, I'm teaching leadership, I'm running philanthropies, but I can take my teacher hat off in a minute and be your friend when it's needed, right? But I had 192 kids a semester. And so the reality is that I didn't have the ability to serve that for every kid. Our mission is to fill in the cracks, to go and find those kids that don't have this and provide that for them. So we recognize that what we want to do is we want to go meet the little where they are and just provide a mentor that is trained, that is intentionally selected, that is brought up and intentionally supported, so they can go meet the little where they are and walk with them rather than to force them in direction. What's the impact of that? In 2024, we had a record year. We had 299 matches that were made and served. That's 299 bigs that we had to go recruit, train, do background research on, get to know, and 299 littles that directly had a one-to-one match. It says growth in 2025 year to date. That number is actually incorrect. I need to update it. We're at 358 or 357 matches that we've made and served this year in 2025 alone. So we've had a record year for almost a decade. We're very, very proud of that. Some data. So this might be a data point you guys would want to kind of collect if you're needing numbers for anything. But we track every single piece of information. We do surveys with our bigs, our littles, and with our parents. And at the 1 year mark of their relationship, we go through and we survey them. 2 year mark, we do it again. And so we're constantly keeping data tracking on how is this going. 62%, their families say, hey, our relationships with home have gotten better. That's significant. 86% say that socially they're thriving. This is really important. Data indicates that for kids in elementary school, there's not one there's really 2 things that they say are the most important to identify what their long-term outcomes are going to be. One is reading. What is their literacy rates? 2, how do they get along socially with their peers? How do they interact with the people around them? Those 2 identifiers do more to indicate how little is going to get along next steps than anything else. So them saying at an almost 90% rate, we're getting along better with the people around us is really, really important. 80% say, hey, I've better learned how to regulate my emotions and my response to things. Huge. 90% say that I am doing better in school. Academic performance has increased. 67% start to say, I'm setting goals long-term. That might seem obvious to you all, but to a little who's wondering, do I eat ramen now or do I save it so I can eat tonight? For them to think beyond today and start thinking in the future is a life-changing approach for a lot of these kids that they've never really adapted to before. 76% say, I have bigger aspirations to go on to a higher level of education. That's huge. 95% avoid or reduce their substance abuse. 86% avoid disciplinary issues at school. 100% have avoided negative interactions with the police. These are huge kind of statistic outcomes.
Do you mind? I take a picture of that real quick.
Yeah, please do.
Sorry.
No. All this, and again, I'll send this to you guys. This will be on the recording, but I can even send you this slideshow if need be. What are the economic impacts? These are also huge. So really this benefits kind of a pipeline to kids going into society. That was ultimately what Earnest Culture was looking at. Not just how do we affect kids, but how do we make sure that they become benefits to our society in the long run. 10% are more likely to enroll in college after high school. But also some data that was really interesting. There was a study that just came out from Harvard earlier this year, is that kids that are in our program that come from a certain socioeconomic situation earn 20% more than other kids that were not in the program from ages 20 to 25. That might not seem like a lot, but that's substantial. From the ages 20 to 25, if they are 20% higher income earning, that is putting them on a platform to start being in a better economic situation long term, which means their kids are brought up in a better economic situation. When that's the case, they become more reliable. They have better, more consistent housing. They have better access to food. All of that from a developmental aspect benefits their children and their own outcomes. Also, when we look at socioeconomic rungs, where a little comes from, they are 2/3 closer to where their big financially exists than they are from their peers that are without a big. So they're taking a gigantic step on that socioeconomic rung of getting to that next stage, which again goes into thrive mode rather than survive mode. So now they're not thinking about, can I pay my month's rent? Or can I not pay my month? Can I pay my rent this month? But instead they're starting to think about, how can I invest? How can I now make a more substantive outcome for my future? These are huge. These are huge financial outcomes. I wanted to quickly show you guys something about a little that means a lot to me. This is Yvonne Solis. Yvonne is actually a former student of mine. I had him in Oklahoma history a long time ago. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear this. I hope you can. But if you can't, then I will just send this to you all individually. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to send you all this video individually so you can watch it on your own time. Yvonne's story is phenomenal. As a little bit of a precursor, Yvonne was matched with Van, and Van was quite a bit older at this time that they met. And he came on, he decided to be a spark and to ignite potential, and he decided to come on and be a big. And he was immediately matched with Yvonne. A year later, Yvonne's situation at home deteriorated so bad that the police ended up showing up to Van's house and said, can you take guardianship of Yvonne? And Van was like, I am in my early 70s. You know, what can I do? They ended up taking guardianship. So he ended up becoming his legal father. And Van's wife became his legal mother. And now Yvonne is in his mid-late 20s, he's 25 now. And he just earlier this year took legal guardianship of his younger sister, who's still in a similar situation. His legacy is now getting out the environment that he was in and also providing that for people below him. Is huge. Their story is just incredible. But it all started with Van deciding, I want to be big. Again, I don't think, for some reason sound's not working on this, but it's just a really incredible story, and I'll pass it along to you so you can kind of find out a little bit about it. So agency growth and success. This is what our numbers look like over the last decade. Going into 2019, going into 2020, we are on a decline. You guys, mentorship and people volunteering has been in a sharp decline since about 2008. That's not just for Big Brothers Big Sisters, that is nationally an issue. People are just not volunteering at the same rate that they were. There's a lot of conflict and conflicting opinions as to why this is. When we got to 2020, we kind of bottomed out in a lot of ways because COVID hit. And so people were even more removed from going out and volunteering. I am extremely proud, though. I took over the Norman office in 2024. And since then, we've seen just a really remarkable rebound. And at this point in the year in 2025, we've already made and matched 357 matches, which takes us back to almost being aligned with 2016. And I have no doubt that we will be above the 2015 number by not the end of this month, but by the end of the next month. So I'm very, very proud of the growth that we've had and the success we have had, and the number of matches we made. And I start to think of 357 stories, just like Yvonne's, that are life-changing. So it's huge. So we've had year-over-year growth. Fundraising goals, I've redirected some of our gala, some of our big fundraising events. Our gala, we did Nashville, Norman. I bought my first pair of cowboy boots ever in my lifetime about a month and a half ago. And that's saying something considering I was born and raised in Ponca City, a small town in northern Oklahoma. But the only pair of boots I've ever had have been motocross boots because I'm a motocross guy. And they've been hiking and hunting boots, and that's it, but never Western. But that gala was actually, we ended up having a record event when it comes to funding that was raised since 2019. So that's huge. We also were identified in 2024 as the 2023 National Agency of the Year. So I'm very, very proud to be part of that. So in 2023, we were recognized, the event was in 2024. We were recognized as the 2023 Agency of the Year. At that time, I was our Open City Director. But then the Norman area opened up, and this is my home, has been for 20 years. So I came back to Norman. We also got a bunch of marketing excellence. We get they give about 5 gold awards every year for national marketing. And our marketing director, who also offices in this office with me, she's won at least 2 of those every year for the last 3 years, which is huge. She's amazing, though. These are some of our shared resources, some of our partners that we deal with here in Norman that help make what we do possible, not including some of our people that are sponsors of ours, but these are just direct kind of foundations that give us a lot of support and develop partnerships with. So that's kind of like a big overarching understanding of what it is that we do, who it is some of our partnerships are, and some of the impact of it. So now I'm going to open this up to the room, and hopefully you've got a pretty decent understanding of what it is that we do, how we do it, and any questions. Let's do a little Q&A session. Good.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what do you feel are some of like the positive impacts of participating in this program? Like, whether that be as like a big or a program specialist.
Yeah, I love that question. So I talked a little bit earlier about I was a teacher, and you guys, I came from a very, very rough upbringing. So I'm a child of abuse. I am one of 5 kids in my family, lived in a 2-bedroom house, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I had a 7th grade teacher as my first year in public education. Prior to that, I was in like a homeschooling cohort that happened to occur at my church. And I grew up Pentecostal, and my church was like my community, my school. If you're like, it sounds like you're in a cult. We were very close to it. We didn't live in one community like location, but we were very near to that. And so 7th grade was my first year in public education, and a kid coming from a homeschooling cohort and a little, private institution at our church. It was a big change to suddenly be in a school of 900 people, right? So I had a 7th grade teacher. His name is Marsh Boomer, who is my geography teacher, who saw a kid that was pretty scared of the world around me because I've been told that the world's always out to get you, kind of thing. And he all of a sudden saw that I had curiosities about China. I had curiosities about the Middle East. I had curiosities about Africa. And so he used that as the connector to me. And he just started pouring into me. Marsh Boomer was at my wedding when my wife and I got married. He became somebody that was a consistent person in my life that poured back into me and allowed me to help grow alongside. And so whenever I became a teacher, it was really intentional. I was teaching hard classes, but I'm like, I always want to be that teacher that I needed whenever I was a kid, that Marsh Boomer was. Being a big is that same opportunity. I have so many bigs that say, I came in here because I needed to sign up for something. I had to get volunteer hours. And I thought it'd be cool to be able to, rather than going and painting a wall at a church or something like that. Instead, I could go for 1 hour every single week and hang out with my little. And that was a really quality way of gaining hours. But something I hear consistently is I got to be the big that I needed when I was a kid. Or I got to look at something in them and say, my God, why would you ever think about yourself that way? And I realized I do that to me. And it's cathartic whenever you see somebody else and you say, I want to be the support that you need. And I want you to help resolve so that you don't grow up having the same things that I'm dealing with as a young adult or as an old adult. And so being a big, I think in a lot of ways, yes, you get to go out and you get to pour into somebody in a way that is also pouring back into yourself. And so many bigs I have, they come back and say, I thought I was doing this for a kid, but I also realized I was benefited by it. So that's a really cool thing. My program specialist, I think that a lot like me, there are people that love to see the community engage and help the community's issues. Going all the way back to Ernest Culture, I think they get to say, I get to support people becoming better about being intentional about the way that they engage with the community around them. So we all become pieces of this greater process to go out and make kids' lives better and ultimately to serve and make our communities better. So that's really important.
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Alex.
So I wanted to ask, like, in what ways has being part of like Big Brother, Big Sister influenced your own sense of like belonging and identity?
Well, I know that's an awesome question. So I think that my story is a little bit unique because I came in as a director here, um, already kind of doing that in a lot of ways, since I am a teacher, by nature.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things is I felt a great sense of I'm doing it a lot on my own as a teacher. You don't have a whole lot of support mechanisms as a teacher. It's like, here's your classroom as bare, figure out a way to make it feel comfortable and figure out a way to make your kids feel capable. And so I dove into that pretty heavy. What I love about Big Brothers, Big Sisters, our job is not to serve the kids directly alone. Is to go make connections, whether that be businesses that say, we can support you, we can financially support you, or they say, we want you to come talk to our staff about being bigs. Or whether it's students like you or people in the community that we get to connect. And I say, look, everybody here has a way they can pour in. You can be a big. You can be an ambassador to us. You can help us spread the message. You can go back to your sorority and say, I really want Stuemky or I really want Michael to come talk to us. I want to connect us. Or your student organizations and communities that you're part of. Or you say, you know what? I want to help fundraise. I want to help find ways to continue to support what it is you guys do. I love that we don't do this alone, a lot like I did as a teacher. That's been a big shift for me. So for me, now it's about how do I go out and engage the community to come be part of this thing? Whether that's me being making a total jackass out of myself and being a goof on social media to try to get people to click so they go and they engage with it in some way, or whether it's developing our big things like this, or where I'm going out and presenting to 5 people or to 5,000 people. That's my role. And that's what I get to do. And I love that it's getting people to start thinking about, wait, how do I get out of my own zone and go and start impacting something beyond myself? And the ultimate thing is that doesn't stop there. Anything you do that benefits the community ultimately affects you as well. Because when the community around you is better, that means that you are in a better environment. And so I love the way that that has shifted my approach to doing it directly by myself to now engaging an entire community to help.
Okay, so one last question, like, the reason why you decided to be part of Big Brother, Big Sister is because you were a teacher before, and then like you kind of like find that why you were a teacher, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that? I don't know that I understand it.
Okay, so like the reason why you decided to join Big Brother, Big Sister is because you were a history teacher before. Okay.
Yeah, I also had some people tugging at me. So I never wanted to leave the classroom. I love teaching.
Mhm.
But I also ran a student organization at Norman North called SPUD, which is Students Performing Unselfish Deeds. We are a philanthropic organization. We'd raise about $250,000 a year for local needs in Norman. So usually individuals or small organizations that were in need. That's what gave me my first touch of engaging a community to supporting something beyond us.
Mhm.
And so I think that's kind of where it began. But also, our Norman director at the time was a friend of mine, and the Oklahoma City area office was open. They didn't have a director, and he started recruiting me really heavily. He also started leveraging my wife to recruit me really heavily. And so, because we're all collective friends. And so that's maybe where I got my idea of it. And that's where I got my start here. But yeah, I don't know that I initially was seeking to come to Big Brothers Big Sisters. But when they put the bug in my ear, I went on and looked at the website. I'm like, my God, this is what I love about what I do as a teacher. I'll always love teaching history. I'll always love teaching and being in the classroom with people that want to be young leaders, but going and like serving kids that were the ones that I always wanted to help beyond the classroom was just a really cool opportunity. And that's what really led me to it.
Okay, so you have been part of like Big Brother Big Sister for like 2 years now, and then what would you say like are some of like the challenges that like make like youth not to feel like they belong into the organization?
That make youth feel like they don't belong. That's interesting. I don't know that I've really given that much thought before. One of the things that we try to do is a lot of times we're dealing with kids that don't feel like they belong much of anywhere. They maybe don't feel comfortable at home. They might struggle with bullying or things like that that are happening at school. And so one of our early hurdles is to at least make them feel like they belong in the relationship they're developing with their big. Um, if I'm being real, though, that early on is a lot of times unnatural.
Okay.
You're matching them with somebody they don't have any connection to beyond this program. And so one of our early hurdles is how do we go through and support making both the big and the little naturally start gravitating towards feeling comfortable with one another. Let me give an example. I had a big that called, we've recognized that the 90-day mark is a really important moment. About 3 months is a really important moment for us to go through and give additional supports to the big so they know, hey, we're getting past the honeymoon stage. How do we now get to a stage where we're getting more real with one another? And so I had a big that he said, I'm running out of ideas. He was trying to make a big production out of everything. He wanted it to be an OU game or an OU basketball game or taking them out. He's like, but I don't really financially have the ability to go and make things big all the time. And I'm running out of ideas. I said, the best thing you can do, take him grocery shopping. And he thought that was such a lame idea. He called me afterwards. He's like, you know what the most amazing thing is? He goes, we had more conversation grocery shopping than we've ever had any other time. I said, what spurred it? He said, well, I buy fruits and vegetables because I make smoothies every morning. And he goes, I do that because I'm really intentional about my health. The littles only ever known microwave foods. They've only known like pantry items and microwave foods and ramen and things like that. He said, so they asked me, like, why are you buying those things? And I got to talk to him about why I do this and why I think about it for my health and why I do that. And then the little started saying, can I go home with some of this stuff? And so the little started thinking about, if I'm intentionally making food, I'm thinking about tomorrow. I'm starting to think about my future. He goes, it led me to a conversation with him that I got to understand what his home situation actually was. And so it broke the ice on having much more real conversations. And so some of those early difficulties of relationship, I think we've recognized we've got to support the big to feel comfortable through that. And ultimately that makes it more comfortable with the little. And that's really where next steps of having real developed relationships starts to occur. So I hope that answered your question, Elena. I know it's a little bit abstract, but I hope that gave you some indication of kind of like how we break through some of these kind of difficulties of early relationships in that.
Yeah, you definitely answered my question. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks. What about here? Yep.
So your national conference for this year was the Power of Me. So how did you guys come up with that? I really like the idea.
I'm sorry. Can you come up with that again?
This year's national conference was Power of We, right?
Power of We?
Yeah.
So we don't come up with that. That is a national thing. So we have Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. Okay. And Big Brothers Big Sisters of America is holding that conference. And I actually wasn't at that one. So the Power of We, that's a really good question. I can get back to you on that and give you some more information. But yeah, I think the power of we is really this collective idea. And I would just say from what our mission statements are, is that we are not an isolated organization. We are really collectively thinking about how can we engage the community to support littles. A lot of organizations say our littles come here and they've dealt with these things and we want to give them services one-to-one. And so they have counselors that are here, and then they send them back to their environments. We're a little bit different because we're trying to engage the community to being mentors. So our job is, yes, to bring them here and provide whatever services we can and to connect them with whatever the services, but we're really heavily reliant on bigs and a community being part of what it is that we do. And so our mission is not only in this building, it's well outside of it. And that's a we mentality. So I bet that's probably where a lot of that kind of concept comes from. But yeah, it's a good question. Power of we. I'll look into that a little bit more.
So what activities do you do during the national conference?
National conference is big. So primarily what you're doing when you're there. So I wasn't at this one, but I was at our year prior when we won the National Agency of the Year. It's a lot of professional development. So what are other agencies what are they doing that we can bring back and apply here? Honestly, a lot of agencies are looking to us. What is it that you're doing? Because we're growing, and Oklahoma had the best growth of number of matches, better than every other agency in the nation last year. Pat ourselves on the back. That's a huge thing, right? So a lot of them were looking to us, like, how are you doing this? Also, from a financial perspective, we spend less on like events that are fundraising events than almost every other agency. Nationally, the average for like a formal fundraising event is that people are spending 30 to 35% of their income from the event on the event. We keep it about 22 cents on the dollar or less. So they're looking at us like, how are you doing that? How are you having these fundraising events and still spending so little on them? Well, first I want to say, why are we doing that? Because we want as much money to go back directly to serving littles as possible. We want to be as financially efficient as possible. But also we develop great partnerships in the community. Say, hey, rather than us buying this thing from you, will you come in and be a partner and provide it? And so that's really important to us that we do those things. So at the conference, it's a lot of collaboration. What is it that you're doing there that we can bring back to make ourselves more efficient, or that we can use to better our services? And then what are we doing that can give back to you? So it's a very collaborative power of we type of thing. Yeah. Any other questions here?
I was gonna ask, so like I kind of was looking at y'all's website and looking through values that y'all value. Mine is how do the mentors hold the mentees accountable? And how do you all hold the mentors accountable and prevent them from crossing any lines and like that stuff?
That's a great question. So the question, if you guys weren't able to hear, his question is, how is it that we hold the bigs or the mentors accountable? And then how do they hold their littles accountable? So that is a constant coaching. Our program specialists are having constant communication with the bigs, the littles, and if it's a community-based, also with the guardians. If it's a site-based, with the staff at the school. So what we're getting is feedback from them of where are the littles, what are they dealing with? And so with that, we're able to best support the big to knowing what their next steps should be. So a lot of the things we're asking them is, what was your last conversation like? What did you guys go do together? Did they say anything that was concerning? Did they say anything that was exciting? So our job is to support the big so that they're very comfortable and confident, but also we're asking a little cannot come be part of our mission and part of our program if they can't answer some questions like, what is safety? What does that mean to you? So we're asking the little separately, has anybody ever asked you to keep a secret? Has your big ever made you feel uncomfortable? Have they ever? And so we're keeping constant communication with them, and they're not even allowed to be part of our program unless they can have that type of conversation. So they can advocate for themselves. Safety is our number one priority. Then we're talking to the guardian. We're talking to the teachers and the principals and the counselors at the school to make sure of that. And so that is foundationally what it is we're looking to do. But beyond that, how does the big hold their little accountable? We have those conversations. Hey, if the little's not stepping up, if they're having still conflict with their peers or having fights at home or fights at school or wherever it might be, it's our job to coach the big on how do you have a conversation that is not, I'm here to punish you. Once you take the position of I'm here to punish you, that changes the relationship for the little. You're now not a friend of life experience. You're now somebody that's a lot like my teacher. So it's a lot like my parent. So it shifts the relationship. So we're like, again, I want you to walk with them. And as you walk with them, sometimes you put your hand on their shoulder and you guide a little bit. But the moment you put your hand on their shoulders in front of them and push back, what is a kid in conflict going to do? What do we all do? We fight back. We push back. But instead, if you walk with them and do a little bit of guidance, they'll walk with you. And what's really cool is eventually you can take your hands off and you can turn and go down a different path and they'll come with you. They trust you. They realize you're not there to try to force anything. So our job is to coach the big so that they can help walk with that little and coach them along. Hey, I heard you say this, or hey, you didn't do so great in that class. How can I help you? Do you want to go over your math? Do you want to go over or that other kid said something to you and you hit him. Let me tell you about a time I got in a fight when I was a kid. And let me tell you what I've learned about it as I've gotten older. Right. And so by having those conversations with a trusted friend rather than somebody in a position of power, it shifts the way that littles start to go to an adult to ask for help. And that's big. And that's what a lot of that accountability looks like. How they get there is a lot of times through us. So then we're telling the big, hey, we want you to have these conversations. Here's how you can go about it. Again, you might not have developmental psychology understanding or experience. We do. That's what we do. But also, we're going to hold the big accountable. Did you go out and have your meeting with them last week? If you didn't, you told us that you would be there weekly. You told the little you would be there weekly. They have had enough adults in their life that make them promises they don't follow through with. You committed to saying you would never do that. And then you committed to saying you're going to be with them for at least a year. So we're going to hold you accountable. So we have hard conversations with bigs about that. So that's a very real thing that we deal with fairly regularly. But the good thing is my staff is very geared up to have those conversations. So the way we hold them accountable and the way we expect them to hold their little accountable kind of wrapped up into that answer. Did that help?
Yes.
Good.
Very much. I have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
If you have one.
Oh no, he's answered all mine and more. So
Yeah.
So my other question, how do y'all instill grit into the mentors and make sure that that is something that they pass down to the mentees?
How do you instill? So his question was, how do you instill grit into the mentors and hope they pass that down to mentees? One of the things we recognize, we talked a little bit about how many of the ACE scores that our littles have. One of the things that best indicates that they can have grit and kind of pass through these things and come out on the other side of it in a positive way is by having a consistent adult. Again, that's walking through it with them. The reality is sometimes our bigs are walking into situations they don't know how to deal with. They just don't. So we're there to coach them. But the grit of that, how do you pass through it? I had an Eastern Indian big who was with her little for about 3 months. And her little said something to her. And the big came and was like, I want to close our match. Her little was African American. And her little told her, she was like, me and my parents, we don't like Indians. And she was like, what do you mean by that? It was a moment where the little was just regurgitating something she hears at home. And the big came in and said, I want to close the match. And I said, well, hold on, let's stop here for a second. Why is the little saying that? And she said, well, I don't know, but she doesn't like me. I said, let me show you what she says about you. All of our match support calls that we have with the little, she talks nothing but positively about you. She's always so excited to see you. She's always really grateful for the things you went and did. So why is she saying this? She's saying it because her environment says it. Do you want to break a cycle or don't you? Right? If you pull out now, you're reinforcing what she's hearing at home. But if you instead say, you know what? I'm the adult in the room and I heard that. And let me come back to her next week and still say, I heard what you said, but I still love you. That will break that tradition that she's hearing at home. And you can also say, hold on, but why did you say that? You said you don't like Indians. You know that I'm Indian, right? Let me tell you a little bit about my heritage. Let me tell you the things I'm so proud of about my culture. Let me connect it with things you might be proud of about your culture as well. And so our job is to take when a big doesn't know how to take the next step or wants to back out because they felt offended or they felt uneasy. Our job is to support them. Maybe that's a tough conversation about you promised you'd be there even through the good and the bad. Now we're here to help you with that and think about why is this maybe the way the little responded, or why is this maybe the way. And the reality is that sometimes kids are looking for boundaries. They don't know where you're going to snap back at them. They also want to see if I offend you, do you leave like everybody else has? And so when you show up and say, I'm not going to, even through the discomfort, I'm not going to, that is a moment where you can flip that switch and where they say, cool, I'm with you, right? I trust you. And so a lot of what we do to instill grit into our bigs, which is what they can pass on through modeling that behavior for the little, is just saying, you're hitting an uncomfortable spot. Every relationship goes through it. My God, I've been married, it'll be 19 years and 13 days from today. And we still go through those moments of growth. Growth is uncomfortable. You're going to run into it, right? Every bit of growth comes with discomfort. If you're lifting weights, you get sore. You're sore because you're building muscle, right? So you're going to be sore. You're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. Let's pass through that. And when you do that, you show the kid they can do it too. So that would be my answer to that.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So you said I've answered every question and then some.
Yes, and more. So
Good.
I'm all good.
Okay, you all that are here with us virtually, do you have any questions about it?
I have like 2 questions.
All right, so James, let's go with you, and then Alex will go to you next, okay?
Oh, I was just saying that y'all pretty much answered them.
Oh. You'd stated that like you guys had the biggest growth throughout like all other big brother, big sister programs. Do you have like
Yeah.
a percentage that you could like give?
Percentage. I don't have a percentage. So what we look at, let me give you a little bit of the data, or like, let me give you a background about what it is we're looking at and like why we come up with that. So what they do is they looked at how many matches did you start with last year and how many did you end with at the end of the year. Most agencies right now are seeing kind of a flatline growth pattern, meaning for every match that closes, and they close for natural reasons, kids age out, kids move, bigs move. Sometimes we unfortunately have littles that will just take off and we never hear anything from them again. Parents or guardians or whoever they're with take off and leave no trace. And that's a heartbreaking thing, but it's a reality. So look at how many did you start 2024 with, and then how many matches did you make and serve by the end of the year? And we are one of the few agencies that not only saw a growth over the year prior, but we saw a substantial growth over the year prior. A lot of that had to do with some of our redirection of how we are going out and recruiting, what kind of partnerships we're making in the community. What new things we're trying. As an example, I've been developing partnerships with local businesses and saying, will you donate 1 hour of donatable additional lunch for your employees per week? And if you'll do that, we can have them use that 1 hour where they're going and hanging out with their little out of school. They're hanging out with their little out of sight. And so then the companies say, well, yeah, I mean, 1 hour, that doesn't really cost us much. And then at the end of the year, they get to say, look at all this donatable time we gave to our local community. And so, and then they can put a value on it. Well, if that employee gets paid $25 an hour, and then I multiply that by the 56 weeks, that they were hanging out with their little, then I can see what financial value. I can also say, hey, that's a write-off for us. So we're trying to develop partnerships in unique ways that allow us to expand the number of bigs we get coming in. And so because of that kind of maybe new approach, we're seeing growths that nationally other agencies are just not seeing. And we're really proud of that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Is there any like specific reason why this organization is just like really important to you?
Gosh, yeah. Again, I grew up in a tough spot. I grew up in a situation that while I had a roof over my head, thankfully, and while we didn't ever eat fancy, we always had food. So it might be peanut butter and jelly for a week, but we had it. And I'm super grateful for that. And that's not what every kid that I grew up with had. But I had adults around me that poured into me. And I was a kid that whenever I left school, whenever I was going home, I pretty much spent from sun up to sundown away from my house. So I was either on my skateboard or I was on my bike, and I spent it away from my house because that was a place I didn't have to be concerned about what was happening in it. But whenever I had adults, much like Marsh Boomer, that poured into me, my 7th grade teacher, that became something that I wanted to be able to do for other people around me once I became a teacher. And then as I was teaching and I found out about this organization and I eventually applied and became part of it, I just adore that I get to help other adults connect in that same way. That they get to go out and they get to be supporters of our community directly and pour back into littles that might have had a situation or a story that resembled mine or that resembled theirs or that resembled somebody that they knew, and they get to pour into them in a very direct way. And from a data perspective, we recognize just realistically how impactful and how redirectional that is for so many littles. So I just adore that, and hopefully that kind of helps to answer your question a bit, Alex.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for emailing me about this. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you got to join us.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Y'all, if that's it, I'll end this recording here, and I will post this quickly, or as quickly as I can. Probably get it posted by the end of tomorrow, I would guess. And I will send out a link. So if there's anything you need to go back and review, you can just fast forward to the point you needed to review it. But everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being part of this. My people that came and showed up here, you guys, thanks so much. All right. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're
Have a good
amazing.
day.
Have a good day, man. Thank you.
Do the same. Let me end this recording if I can figure out where I did that. There we go.